Buyers, I've always said that choosing the right lender is so important when you're trying to purchase a home. And if you choose the wrong one, it can not only cost you the house of your dreams, but tens of thousands of dollars. And that's almost exactly what happened to one of my buyers this year. So I want to go over what happened and how you could prevent that from happening to you when you're thinking about purchasing a home. If this is your first time tuning into this show, hi, I'm Josh Alexander, your local Orange County real estate agent, as well as host of Orange County Housing Market News, your one-stop shop for all things Orange County. So in today's episode, we're going to be going over three things. Number one, what makes a good lender? Number two, what could happen to you from personal experience when you have a bad lender? And then number three, what you can do to make sure that you are getting the best lender and that you don't have issues during escrow. So let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, so let's first go ahead and start with what you should be looking for when you're trying to decide which lender to work with. And the way I break it down is the 3 C's. So communication, clarity, and commitment. So let's go over those so you understand what they actually mean. So number one is communication. So there's a few things you want to look for with this. So number one, are they getting back to you quickly? Or are they taking a day or two to respond to you every time you ask a question? Number two, are they available when you need to communicate with them? So yes, this means 7 days a week. A lot of lenders only work Monday through Friday, but the good lenders will be available for basic questions at minimum on the weekends as well, which oftentimes is when you're doing your home shopping and placing offers. So you need to have someone available to answer questions when you're trying to go through this process and not just rely on a Monday to Friday schedule. And the third thing with communication, which might seem a little odd, is are they in the same time zone with you, or at least working the same hours that you would typically work in the West Coast? Now, the reason I bring this up is because a lot of larger lenders are national lenders, and they might have their main office in the East Coast, which means that you have a question after 3 p.m., too bad, their office might already be closed and you're not going to hear back from them until early the next morning, which can cause major issues if you don't get off work until 4 or 5 o'clock and you have to answer questions then. So having someone that's working in the same time zone as you is going to be very beneficial, especially if there's problems during escrow that need to be worked out quickly. So the second thing you want to look for when you're trying to find a good lender is clarity. So what I mean by this is, are they walking you through the process, explaining everything in a way that makes sense to you? Are they giving you different options, going over the pros and cons? Are they laying out all the different steps that you're going to be going through as you go through and purchase your home? So that way you have a very good understanding of what you're getting into, the financial ramifications of doing so, and really can make those smart decisions financially because the lender is able to explain it clearly. If you're not getting them to sit down with you and go through the entire process to make sure you understand what you're getting into, you're probably working with the wrong lenders. So that is extremely important, especially for first-time home buyers who have never done this before. You need to have a lender that's going to take the time, sit down, walk you step by step through everything, make sure to go over all the options so you understand everything crystal clear before you start the home buying process. So the third thing you want to look for when you're trying to find a good lender is commitment. So what I mean by this is, does the lender do what they say they're going to do in the time frame they told you they were going to do it? Once you get into escrow, there are a lot of moving pieces. There are things that need to happen in a certain order. So if your lender tells you they can do something and then they can't do it in the time frame they told you, it can cause major issues inside escrow, especially when you look at contingencies, because often the appraisal and loan contingency are one of the last things to get lifted inside escrow. And so once you lift those contingencies, it locks you into purchasing the home. So if the lender has committed to you saying that, yes, I can get these things done within the time frame so you can lift your contingencies and continue purchasing your home, and then they can't do that, they're putting you in danger of losing your home. So when you're looking for a lender, you need to make sure you have a lender that has a great track record of closing escrows on time and not having escrows fall apart because of something on their end. So now that you have a better idea of what a good lender looks like, let's go ahead and go over that quick example that one of my buyers just went through when they were trying to purchase a home and deal with a bad lender at the same time. So before we got into the whole process of looking for homes and getting to escrow, like I typically do when buyers are first starting to look, is I tell them they need to get a hold of a few lenders. I give them some referrals of ones that I've worked with in the past that I know do a good job. And then I told them feel free to look for some other lenders and see who you're most comfortable working with after you explore your options. After everything was said and done, they decided to go with the lender that gave them the best rate. Although I've never worked with them before, it seemed like before escrow they were communicating fine, didn't have any issues getting a hold of them, so I didn't think it was going to be a big deal once we got into escrow. But that's where things started to change as soon as we opened escrow. Now the first red flag that popped up is this company was on the East Coast, and we knew that going in, but the lender said we should have no problem communicating with them even though they're on the East Coast because some of their associates work on West Coast time. However, that was really not the case. So every time that we emailed or called this lender, it would take them 24, 48 hours to get back to us. And when we have so many moving parts during escrow, it becomes extremely frustrating when you're trying to get things done and it takes a day or two to get back to someone. So the second issue popped up when the original lender said we're going to be working with another lender on this file and all trying to work together to get this closed. Now, working with two lenders from the same company on a file is not unique. That happens. It's understandable. However, the problem arose because one of these lenders was working on East Coast time, the other lender was working on West Coast time, and oftentimes one of these two lenders seemed to be on vacation for some reason, so it was extremely difficult for us to stay on the same page when we had all these different time zones we were working with. Now, the next major red flag came a little bit after we opened escrow. So typically, when you open escrow, you send all the information the lender needs from the buyer, as well as once the appraisal is done, you send that to the lender as well. They send it to an underwriting department, and that underwriting department is basically giving final approval for that loan. Now, in most cases, that underwriter is going to come back saying they have a few conditions on the loan, which just basically means they needed some updated paperwork. So updated paycheck stub, updated financial statement. Usually it's not that big of an issue. And so we went to the underwriting department, it came back, and the lender said, hey, everything looks good. We can go ahead and remove our appraisal and our loan contingency because this offer is basically as good as cash now. We removed it, and then a few days after that, all of a sudden the lender comes back and says, oh, the underwriting department came back again with some additional conditions that need to be met. This kind of caught everybody off guard because we already thought it went through underwriting once, but the buyers were trying to be understanding. They took a few hours off of work, got the documents that the underwriter needed, sent it as soon as they could, and then everything went back into underwriting and assumed that everything would be good. And then again, a few days after that, the underwriter came back again saying, oh wait, there's some more conditions that need to be met before we can fully approve this loan. Now this continued to happen 4 times throughout escrow, and this is definitely not common. And what made things even worse is the lender became harder and harder to get a hold of. So the typical response time started going to 2 days, and for me, there was a period where I wasn't able to get a hold of them for 10 days during escrow, calling, texting, emailing, no response whatsoever. Extremely frustrating. Like I said, when you're going through escrow, there's a lot of moving parts and communication is key during escrow, especially with the lender to make sure everything gets done on time. So the lender became extremely unresponsive. They were going back and forth with underwriting multiple times. Every time we went through the underwriting department, we had to wait a few more days and crossed our fingers they wouldn't come back with an additional condition that they haven't met yet for some reason that just popped up. And then what made things even worse is we were only about 5 days away from escrow closing at this point, and then all of a sudden the underwriters changed. So one underwriter left, another underwriter took over the file, and then they had a new condition that we had to meet, and this is only a few days before escrow was supposed to close. So I had to get on the phone with the selling agent, update them because the selling agent and the buyer's agent should be working cooperatively and not just waiting for things to explode, but going through and proactively going to try to figure out solutions. So I talked to the selling agent, we explained the situation, and luckily for this specific transaction, the seller didn't need to close on that specific date that we originally told them we could, and they were okay extending escrow if we needed it. So luckily in this circumstance, we finally got that last underwriting condition met on the day we were supposed to close escrow, and then we were able to get everything set up to close the next day. Now this isn't always the case. We got lucky with the seller because they were being flexible with us, but typically in a contract, when you say you're going to close on a date, you need to close on that date. And when sellers are trying to sell their home, oftentimes they're buying another home and need the funds from the sale of their current home to purchase another one. And if they don't get those on time, that could jeopardize them purchasing their new home and cause even more issues. So luckily, that wasn't the case this time. But if we had just one more delay from escrow closing and had to go through that underwriting process again, there's a good chance that the seller would have said, no, we need to close this now, you're taking too long. And basically that means that if the buyer wasn't able to close on that home with or without that loan, they can lose that home and they can lose their deposit, which was tens of thousands of dollars for not being able to do what they said they were going to do. even though it was the lender's issue, because the buyer's name is the one on the contract. If they can't perform, they're going to be the ones holding the bag and the ones financially responsible if they can't perform on that contract. So with all that being said, you might be thinking at this point, well, I would like to have a good lender, but it's extremely difficult to really determine these things until really it's already too late and I'm in escrow and I'm having these issues. Well, this is where doing your due diligence before you choose your lender can save you a lot of hassle and a lot of headaches once you get into escrow. So let's go over a few things that you can do to make sure that this doesn't happen to you. So number one is communication. So when you reach out to the lender, are they getting back to you quickly? Are they getting back to you in the type of format you want to be talked to? So either by phone, email, text. Is it easy to get a hold of them? Is it easy to get answers quickly? You want to make sure, number one, that's the bare minimum when you start talking to a lender. Number two, always ask, are you on the East Coast, on the West Coast? What are your hours? Are you available on the weekend? The more available the lender is, the less likely you're going to have issues. And if issues do arise, the faster you're going to get them solved. Now, on the clarity side of things, the easiest way to determine if you're working with a good lender is, are they taking the time to explain to you in a way that you understand and comprehend the whole process of escrow, what the lender's involvement is, the different steps involved, and what they're going to need from you to make sure that you have a smooth transaction, and basically how the whole process works, answering any questions you might have along the way. If they're not explaining those processes to you, going through in detail what to expect, you're probably working with the wrong lender. Now, the last thing, which is commitment, is going to be one of the hardest things to determine up front if you've had no previous experience with that lender. And really the two best ways to solve this is, number one, if you have a real estate agent, talk to them. They have good recommendations for lenders they've worked with plenty of times in the past that they've never had issues with. They do a great job with customer service and walking buyers through the entire process without having any issues that they can refer you to, so you know you're getting a good lender. And that goes for all three of the C's. The agent is going to be able to let you know, I've worked with this lender before, they're great at communication, they're great at explaining everything, and when they say they're going to do something, they actually do it. So that's really the simplest way and the easiest way to make sure that you're working with the right lender, is talk to your trusted real estate agent and get a few different lender referrals from them, and then make sure you ask your agent, why are you referring these lenders to me? Because they're going to be able to bring up some past experiences they've had with them and most likely go over a lot of those 3 C's with you, so you can be confident that you're choosing the right lender. And the other thing that you can always do to figure out the commitment of that lender is just go on Google their name, look at some of the more recent reviews, and see what other people have to say about them. When you're reading those reviews, try to look for those 3 C's. Are they seeing reviews that are saying, hey, these people communicate great with me, they were very clear on everything about the whole process, and they told me they were going to be able to close in this many days, and they did. If you're seeing a lot of reviews that bring up those 3 C's, oftentimes that means that lender is going to be a good lender to work with. Now, the last thing I want to bring up when it comes to lenders, and you might be surprised that I haven't even talked about this yet, is interest rates. So obviously, when most buyers are shopping for lenders, their most important priority is, what rate are the lenders going to give to me? Because that ultimately is going to translate to you saving the most amount of money every single month and lowering your mortgage costs, which I completely understand. However, what I am saying is you want to balance the best rate you can get along with those 3 C's to make sure you're getting the best combination of both worlds. So that way, if you get into escrow on your dream home, you know that you have a very good chance of it closing, not having issues, not being stressed. And if rates come down in the future, you can always refinance. Whereas on the other hand, if you have a bad lender, they can not only cost you that dream home, but if you remove contingencies and the lender can't get the loan for some reason at the very end, you could be on the hook for tens of thousands of dollars that you're now going to owe the seller. So when you're shopping for a lender, you always want to make sure that you're balancing the best rate you can get along with communication, clarity, and commitment. If you can get the best of all of those, that's going to give you the best chance of getting into your home at a great rate and making sure that you and your family have a great place to live for the foreseeable future. Now, if you live in the Orange County or surrounding area and you have more questions about how to pick the best lender, you need a referral for a lender, or you just have some general questions on how to purchase a home, especially in today's market, feel free to click the link either in my bio or below in the description, depending on where you're watching this, and set up a free 30-minute discovery call where we can talk about any questions that you might have about the housing market as it relates to you and your personal situation. So again, set that up anytime at a time that's convenient to you, and we'll go ahead and discuss it in a little bit more detail. Now, if you do find this information useful, again, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I would really appreciate it. I come out with new content every single week, and if you have any family or friends that might find this information useful, please consider passing it along as well. I would really appreciate it. And until next time, stay healthy, stay happy, and I'll see you on the next show. Bye, everybody.